Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, the sequel to
Yes.
Aquaman from 2018. So right before we started the show, we watched the new trailer that just got released this week. So Bridget, I wanted to ask you, what is your take on this trailer? This latest DC movie in a series of DC movies where the last four have majorly underperformed or completely bombed. Here comes Aquaman 2, the sequel to 2018's Aquaman that made $1 billion. What did you think about the trailer, and what are your expectations of the movie?
Honestly, it did pique my interest watching it. This is random, but just the beginning scene, it seems really kind of talking about him, and now he's a family man. And it was so weird. I was getting flashbacks to like Shrek 3 when he has all those babies and he like is in his little hut like, oh, I'm a dad now. And so it did kind of seem like, oh, this is like a different side of Aquaman we haven't seen, with his shirt off and his six pack. But then, a couple minutes later, he's back at it in the adventure. Gotta save his kingdom. That's kind of the big plot point as the king of Atlantis. So we kind of see him in this role, which was set up from the first movie. And it does look promising. It looks like I have an idea that the theme might be, him balancing his two lives in a way and kicking some dark ocean creature butt. Lots of scary looking things that they were fighting with those Tritons. So yeah, definitely action packed for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited to see, Patrick Wilson back as Orm. I think that was a fun part, because it's like the first 20 seconds of the movie very much gave me, like Fast and Furious family vibes.
I don't have friends. I got family.
Like, he's a family man. It's all about that. And of course, he was in the latest Fast and Furious movie, Jason Momoa. So then it, like you said, it kind of picks up. And what I liked about the rest of the trailer was that it really feels like this is going to be that, like Lethal Weapon-esque, two, in this case, brothers or half brothers going on this adventure to stop Black Manta, who, of course, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, he was in the first movie. He was a secondary villain. And now in this movie, it looks like he's taking center stage. It does kind of dive a little bit deeper into the DC mythology with like the Dark Trident, and they're kind of hinting at like there were 7 kingdoms that the King of Atlantis ruled over. Yeah. So they're going to dive a little bit deeper into that part of the mythology. It's expanding the world that the first Aquaman movie created. And it looks like to me this movie, even though it is now officially, at least, the last movie in the DCU continuity that began with Man of Steel in 2013, it certainly doesn't look like, at least from this trailer, that it's meant to be like some sort of like big grand conclusion to anything. And there are some, not rumors, but there, people have been talking about, well, Jason Momoa, is he going to stick around as Aquaman in the new DCU under James Gunn and Peter Safran, or is he going to play somebody like Lobo, which is another character that people like would love for him to play, or could he do both? Or like, and then Jason Momoa has on occasion said like, I will always be Aquaman, and and then I think at one point James Gunn said that nobody's going to play more than one character. So like if you put the pieces together, it's still unfortunately pretty vague where things are going. We know there's some actors who are going to be reprising their roles from the DCEU in the DCU, like Amanda Waller is going to continue to be played by Viola Davis. John Cena is going to continue to play Peacemaker. We've got a few other characters like that. But outside of those characters, of course, we know Superman's being recast and basically rebooted. So Henry Cavill's no longer there. And we know the same thing is going to be happening for the Batman character. So, and then, of course, Wonder Woman, there's a little bit of like, Gal Gadot seems to think she's going to be continuing to play the role, but officially we don't know. James Gunn hasn't said anything to the contrary. With Aquaman, my concern becomes, especially if this is a good movie, and if it makes like 500 million or more than 500 million, because it is coming out in December. It's coming out around the same time of year that the first one did. And it's a time of year when there's plenty of money to go around at the box office. So I'm sure if it's good that people are going to go check it out. And much like the first movie, it probably has a good amount of potential to make money. And if it does, then, does that mean we're going to get a third one in the franchise and kind of like have a whole trilogy? Or do you think they'll still kind of say, well, this is the end of this world and now we're moving forward, and no matter how well this movie does, there's gonna no more of this Aquaman, at least we're gonna go in a different direction? Like, where do you think things are gonna go past this?
Just, I don't know. I feel like I've now come to expect that it's never just two. It seems like there's always going to be a third. If they can milk a franchise as much as they can, I feel like they will. Maybe that's just after the Avengers, seeing the first two, and I thought the third was going to be the last, and then there was the fourth. So I wouldn't put it past them to milk this out a little more and get a third movie. It just almost seems weird these days not to have a first, second, and third. But you're right, it really will factor in whether they decide to keep him as Aquaman, which seems to make the most sense at this point, I think. So yeah, it'll be interesting. But one question I did have watching it as well was, I remember, Amber Heard was in the first one, and then there was the whole drama that happened, and a lot of people were saying she wasn't going to be in the second. Maybe saw a glimpse of her, but yeah, it seems like they're cutting ties with dramatic people.
Yeah, I did see her in a couple of shots in this movie trailer. Like, so she's sort of like, there's one particular shot in the trailer, pretty much in like the back half of the trailer, where you can see her clearly. And then I feel like I maybe noticed her in a couple of other spots, but really she wasn't really the focus of the shot. So definitely, I don't know if it's either that they're hiding her in the trailer and she has a bigger role than what we have gotten so far, based on the trailer itself. Or maybe her role is much reduced, because she was like one of the leads in the first movie. She was basically the love interest of Aquaman, and she played a significant role throughout the whole movie. Where it seems like in this one, at least so far, based on that trailer alone, you would believe that there's a lot more Nicole Kidman in there. There's a lot more of Aquaman, Tamora Morrison, Aquaman's dad. There's a lot more of those characters, especially Orm and Aquaman, kind of going on this journey together as half brothers, than there is of Amber Heard's Mira. So that is something I'm curious about. Like, when we get more trailers, I'm sure we'll get at least one more trailer, maybe two. And like, how did it show her in those trailers? Because if we continue to see the pattern that she's not a big part of it, and then we go see the movie and she is, of course, a significant part of the film, then yeah, of course, they're going to be hiding her, and that means they're hiding her in the marketing. I will say, though, like, if they are indeed hiding her in the marketing, I don't blame them, because the last 4 DCEU films, including Black Adam, Shazam 2, The Flash, and Blue Beetle, they all had some level of baggage with them. I think Blue Beetle probably the least amount of baggage, because it was very much, I think there was a lot of positive buzz around it. Unfortunately, the franchise as a whole didn't, and I think that hurt that movie. It was one of the lesser known character that,
I agree.
If it was, like coming out of the peak of, let's say, the MCU's powers, like an Ant-Man movie, it would have done really well, because it was a decent film. But The Flash had the Ezra Miller baggage. Shazam 2 had its own issues with all the visual effects and other things that were going on. They dropped it at like a weird time of year, like in March, where a lot of movies don't tend to make a lot of money. And then we had, Black Adam with its own kind of controversy, whether it was the fact that, Henry Cavill's back, but then Henry Cavill's not back. James Gunn being hired around the same time. So this movie, if they're doing anything within their power to get away from any potential negative headlines around Amber Heard's involvement in the film, from the marketing standpoint, I totally understand that. I do, but I hope that they don't like completely write her character off, because she is a big part of that story.
The first one, right?
Yeah.
That's, I think, what I was most curious about. I was so curious was, how are they just going to switch the focus of this next film if they are going to cut her out? I feel like, they have to go tactfully about it. So it'll be interesting to see. I almost am intrigued to see it, even just to see how they do that.
Absolutely. And I will say that this movie will, in my opinion, make probably close to 500 million, if not more, because the first movie was so good. And the first movie came out at a time when it was, I think, the first DC movie since that whole Justice League debacle. and it made $1 billion. So
Yeah.
I think the audience is clearly like, because the movie looked visually amazing. I still think it's probably one of the best looking movies DC has put out in recent years. And this one, the trailer at least it makes it look like those same visuals are going to be back. I feel like I saw some of the same actors playing the guards, like in the stadium shots where, they're about to do all that battle. And so the bloodthirsty, like they go wild for when in the first movie, Orm and Aquaman do battle. And then later on in the final act, you see like soldiers on horses and sharks. And I'm like, that's like it's one of those things where like I didn't think I was ever going to see that on film, but it looks cool as heck, and I am all for it. And this movie trailer kind of has that same vibe, and it's sort of continuing a lot of that. And like I said, the first Aquaman movie came out at a time when the DCEU was probably down in the dumps because of that whole Justice League debacle and everything. By that time, we had figured out like, oh yeah, Zack Snyder had left the movie, and it wasn't like basically what we got in theaters was not exactly his vision. And then as a result of that, it was a complete. They went in and redid the whole thing, and the whole Joss Whedon controversy. But still, Aquaman managed to kind of work past that into the $1 billion club, the only $1 billion movie in the DCEU. So I have a feeling the audiences can probably put the two things, off on islands, like saying, hey, oh yeah, these last few DC movies, not very good or did not like him, blah, blah, blah. But Aquaman 2 definitely looks fantastic. So I do feel that it will probably not have as big of an effect on it as from the previous the entries into the DCU, the recent entries into the DCU. I just hope that the next couple of trailers give us even more of an idea of what the story is here, because while this trailer did a pretty good job of telling us what the story is, which a lot of first trailers don't do that, so I do appreciate that. I still would love to get a little more of the nuance behind what exactly is happening here, because a lot of what they teased here like makes me excited. But on the flip side, if you're somebody who is like, don't oversell me on the movie, don't tell me everything in the trailers, then if you watch this trailer, I bet you can watch this trailer and not look at any other piece of marketing for this movie from here till December when the movie comes out, and you will have all that you need to preview this film, because the trailer does a fantastic job of kind of summarizing what this general story is, telling you where Aquaman is in his life right now and where things are headed. And you get to see some of him interacting with Orm. So I do love that. I think Patrick Wilson did a fantastic job in the first movie. I'm excited to see that half-brother love-hate dynamic relationship that they're going to have. So do you think that this is a movie that's going to make anywhere close to $1 billion like the first one? Or do you think this is going to be closer to, like the recent DC movies that have struggled to even cross 400 million at the box office?
That's a good question. I mean, I feel like, definitely when it first came out, had a lot of power behind it. I mean, even just Jason Momoa himself, I think, excited a lot of people to go see it, just to see him perform in this iconic role. So I think that is kind of fair to say it'll make maybe half of what it did when it first came out. With anything, getting that push for people to come and see the second is always a little bit harder. But, I think that the first one did so well that I think people are excited to see this. I do think that's fair. And I know that there has been with the other ones, but this one kind of feels like it's in its own league as far as, the DC films. I think it's definitely got more push behind it than some of the others, for sure.
Yeah, and then like you said, like it's in its own league in the sense that it doesn't feel all that connected to the larger, canon of the DCEU. It sort of feels like it's happening in its own mini world, like a bubble within the larger universe. And that was like a quality of the first film that I think a lot of people appreciated, because if you went and saw that first Aquaman movie, unless somebody told you that it's part of the DCEU where like Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman all exist, you really wouldn't know that any of those characters were part of the same world, because of how immersive what you were seeing on screen was all unto itself. So I do feel like if they kind of lean on that again, then especially in the case of the situation right now at DC, where we don't know who's going to move over to the next continuity, who's being left behind in the old DCEU. and all the other baggage that the DCU currently carries, I think to make a movie that sort of stands on its own and the only connection that it has is really to its predecessor, it probably plays in its favor. So yeah, I'm hoping that, for good things. This trailer was probably one of the better trailers I've seen all year, and I'm excited. We're only a couple months away, and yeah, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. I'm excited to see where this goes, regardless of whether Jason Momoa continues in the role past this or not. So guys, let us know in the comments below what you think about Aquaman and the Last Kingdom's first trailer. Do you feel like they gave away too much? Do you feel like this was the right mix of giving us a look at all the storylines in the movie, all the characters that are back? Are you excited to see the movie now, or do you think this is gonna be another flop from DC like we have had recently with all the other movies that have come out this year? So let us know in the comments. Of course, like and subscribe for more content like this on DCU Daily. We covered more DC news like this every day of the week, Monday through Friday.